Welcome to Salute and Biohacking podcast. My name is Vanessa Bertinotti and my mission is to build an Italian-speaking tribe that share my same passion for health optimization and biohacking by bringing to the table experts and people who inspire me. All the information contained in this podcast is purely informative and does not replace medical or therapeutic consultancy. On this episode, I'm super excited to welcome Chris Rocchio. Chris is a health and fitness enthusiast. He is a health coach and meal prep expert, and he is the co-founder of Master Your Health. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. Can you give us a little background on who you are and what you do?
So I am a personal trainer and health coach. So for most of my day, I help clients work on nutrition plans, meal plans to fit specific goals, whether that's fat loss or put on a little bit of muscle. And I also build workout programs as well. Most of the people I train over like online and over the phone, and I don't see in person, but there are people that I do see in person and train in person as well.
Awesome.
So that's the main majority of it. And then I assist Amanda with her online. I kind of backed off from the online Instagram page for a minute because she's just, she's got 1.5 million followers. She's out there doing amazing things. So I like to assist her in her research. I'm kind of like, I do a lot of research in the middle of the day too. That's kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing. So for the people who don't know, Amanda is your wife, and
Yes.
Her name is Amanda Meixner, and you guys are doing such a great job on social media. It's really inspiring. So that's why I invite you here, because I think it's really important also from here in Europe to follow you guys. For people who doesn't know your work. So why?
Thank you. And actually, we talk a lot about some of the policies in Europe and how the U.S. is behind the European policies with some of the restrictions on, certain compounds that are harmful in foods and certain pesticides. So Europe is actually well ahead of the game in comparison to the United States. So we do have we have a growing following in Europe because of this, because we're more, I would say, more aligned with the policies you currently have in place over there.
Interesting. Yeah, but in the US there is really a big community that focus on functional medicine. So we are really also following all your community in this field, because it's really advanced with Dr. Mark Hyman and Dave Asprey and all this amazing community. So maybe we have a better maybe environment in agriculture, but you are really advanced in research, innovation, and technology. So I think it's a good thing to have both of the perspective in this field.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And why helping people optimize their health is so important for you, and where this passion came from?
Well, I rarely meet somebody who doesn't want to change at least one thing about their routine to be a healthier person and live a healthier lifestyle. And these habits and patterns that are built and ingrained into us from years and decades worth of behavior, and they're just very hard to break. And I know that from experience. I was kind of a health nut in high school, and then fell off because I was like really heavily into training for football, and then fell off in college and in my 20s, and like really fell off, went to the opposite side of the spectrum and didn't care about health at all. Just did a lot of damage to my body with like partying and things and not sleeping. And then I made the turnaround in like my younger 30s. So I know what it's like to be on both sides of the spectrum and to kind of turn yourself around and really how it's all about. It's not these huge changes you need to make. It's all about a series of small changes that you make one at a time to get there, right? And so I like to help people and to show them that that's easier than they may think. And so we cover a lot of topics, methods, strategies, and hopefully at least one of them is relevant to the listener and resonates to them and hopefully inspires some change.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's brilliant work. It's really amazing. You have one of the best Instagram pages when it comes to meal prep and nutrition tips. What do you focus on social media, and what are the nutrition principles you promote?
Well, for social media, we, in terms of just a general strategy, we don't like to be restricted. We don't like to tell people too much of what they shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. Even though there are guidelines of things like, hey, you probably don't want to do this. But our approach to that is to be inclusive, to not say that one diet is, for instance, you have vegans who will be out there and take a very hard stance and say, this diet is going to kill you, right? Mm-hmm. Animal products, we don't like to take those absolutist approaches. We take a more general encompassing approach where we accept all different diets and lifestyles, but we like to guide people into certain nutrition principles within those diets and within those lifestyles. Say, for instance, you can be vegan or you can eat meat or whatever, but the main thing is to reduce processed foods and reduce added sugars, right?
Yes.
Another nutrition principle we have is to get nutrient-dense foods. So there's an inverse relationship between food processing and nutrient density. So the more processed a food is, the less dense it is in nutrients. And so we like to reduce that kind of stuff and encourage more whole foods, regardless of what your lifestyle is and what your diet is. And then obviously to drink a lot of water, to make sure that, a lot of times we're craving food. We think we're craving food and we're hungry, but really we're actually just thirsty, because the same hormone regulates both thirst and hunger. Yeah. So that's another huge thing. Another nutrition principle we have is eat the rainbow, which is eat lots of fiber and lots of plants of different colors, because different colors indicate different nutrients and different compounds and antioxidants. Mm-hmm. And another one we like to focus on is, because, obviously you hear the calories in, calories out model of weight loss and weight management, and to always count calories, but we also like to focus on macronutrients and our percentage of fat, protein, and carbs to kind of make that the right fit towards your goal. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, I like to tell people to prioritize protein, which is very satiating, and it preserves and builds muscle mass. And not to go on a tangent about the side thing, but muscle mass is crucial even for women, because it increases your metabolism, because it takes more energy to maintain. So we always take the muscle building approach, whether it's, even if you want to lose fat, we like to take that approach in terms of at least preserving the muscle that you have in your body. And that's not just for young people. It's actually even more important for older people to preserve their muscle, to protect their bones, to protect their joints, things like that. And then finally, I would say sleep is the number one thing. A lot of people don't think of it as a nutrition principle, but sleep affects your cravings, it affects your metabolism. So say, for instance, if you're tired, you're going to be craving more sugars throughout the day, because your brain is going to be searching for that energy, that quick energy, right? Yeah. And then it also affects your metabolism. So, for instance, if one night of poor sleep can make you just as insulin resistant as a type 2 diabetic. Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting about how it can mess with so many different other factors.
Yeah, I agree 1000%. We speak a lot about sleeping and optimizing sleep. Yeah, it's a really important habit to educate people in sleeping. Yeah. And so a thing that I notice in your pages is that you break down the science in an easy way to understand. So it's a really nice way to educate people in a simple way. Is that also what you are looking for when you post your content?
Oh, of course, yes. I think one of the main things about this is empowering people with knowledge, because some people don't know where to start when looking this stuff up, and so they can kind of feel lost when they're looking into, if they're interested in health and nutrition, but don't know where to actually start in the whole topic. We like to guide them with that, and then not only that, but it's also excuse me real quick. So not only that, it's about empowering people to make their own decisions with what little they have in their control, right? Because there are so many things in our lives that aren't in our control, but what we put into our mouths and into our bodies is. And so it's sometimes hard to take a very complex concept and kind of water it down for everybody to understand on the most basic level. And not only that, but Instagram only has something like, you only have 2,200 characters to get your idea across. So it actually forces me to understand the material a lot better, because I have to say it in very simple terms, and I have to say it in a very short amount of time. So I like it because it helps me understand. The more I teach things, the more I understand it myself. And again, it's this information it's not rocket science. It just takes the time to go through and actually read it. So I think everybody has it within their power and within their own knowledge base to understand this stuff and make the correct decisions.
Yeah, that's interesting. And as you said, we know that there is no right way to eat. And are you afraid to be controversial when it comes to posting nutrition content on Instagram? You said that you tried not to be, to be like flexible, but how you choose your content and what to say and not to say in this space?
That's actually a very good question, because there are some topics that are, I'm not afraid to be controversial at all, but there are some controversial topics that are appropriate for Instagram, and there are some that are not, because some require a lot more nuance and a lot more explanation of the different side of things and the details involved. And like I said, 2,200 characters is not enough to properly cover a topic. So there are some topics that I won't touch on Instagram, simply because I can't do a due diligence and can't do them justice without making somebody mad. And as far as like to address the controversial aspect, is that you can rarely say something on Instagram or on social media without making at least one person mad, or at least making one person like say, wait, that's not right. So if you're aiming to please everybody, you end up pleasing no one.
That's true.
And so my thing is that, or like a better way to say that is like, if you don't stand for anything, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. And so it's kind of like, I do take a specific approach. Yes, I do like to be flexible and encourage flexibility and things like that. But we make value judgments all the time, and I do take hard positions on some things. Say, for instance, I take hard positions against the vegans who take an absolutist approach towards diet, and I'm not about absolutist approaches. So that is one thing that is controversial to one person, but is not controversial to a lot of others. And so there's really a lot of subjectivity in that question, but to answer your question, I actually would rather be controversial, because it sparks conversation, and I think a lot of people are too afraid to be controversial nowadays. So I think there's value in it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you. And so you do a lot of food comparison and talking about food groups that are more calorie dense than others. What is your main goal when you do those comparisons?
Well, it's more of like, it's just going back to the idea that I said before about giving people knowledge of their options. And so a lot of times some people don't know what's in their favorite processed food that they buy, or favorite meal that they get for takeout at one of their favorite restaurants, because a lot of them will hide certain ingredients like canola oil. They'll cook with canola oil instead of olive oil and things like that to reduce costs. So for first and foremost, it's just to give people the knowledge of what they're eating currently. Second, it's to give them an easy alternative to not essentially say you can no longer eat anything like this, but just say, hey, here's an option that may not be as good or what you're used to exactly, but it's a good alternative. It's very similar. And if you're trying to, let's just say, wean yourself off of this habit, this is a good crutch to go as an in-between while you're trying to stop this habit. So for instance, like whether, like, say you're addicted to ice cream, and it's like, hey, here's an alternative to this that has 1/3 of the calories and is way healthier. And it still satisfy your ice cream cravings. So things like that. It's just basically whether you're extremely disciplined and you're able to make the decision right then and there to change and switch over, or you need kind of like that middle ground, that incremental change to be able to stop that habit. But either way, we just want to give people options.
Yeah. I think it's a smart way to make the point and to make people aware. So I think it's really a great way to do it. And what is the main?
There's one more thing I wanted to add to that is that there's also a lot of things that are misleading, like marketing tricks, advertisements, and we like to shed light on that, because some people, say for instance, like my mom falls victim to this too when she's buying things for my sister's kids, is she'll buy fruit snacks that say with real fruit juice, right? But it only maybe has like 1 drop of fruit juice and the rest is sugar. And so she's like, oh, it's made with real fruit. And it's like, no, it's not. So that's another thing, is we like to kind of like sift through the marketing tricks and gimmicks and shine some light on that.
Brilliant. Yeah. And what is the main difference between the dieting mindset versus the lifestyle mindset?
This is a really great question, because a lot of people kind of in passing always refer to what they're eating as their diet. But traditionally we think of things like a diet always has this attached meaning to it, that it is a finite amount of time. Like, say for instance, it's springtime and people are going on a diet for summertime because it's time to get into a bathing suit. But the thing is that when the summer's over, you no longer have that motivation that you gave yourself at the beginning of that session, at the beginning of that period, to continue that mindset. So you've given yourself a false reason to be healthier for only a short amount of time, which is the summertime. Whereas the lifestyle mindset is much more sustainable. It's about creating sustainable lifelong habits that you can keep in place for the rest of your life, and that'll help you stay in shape every time summer comes around for bathing suit season. So it's more like making small long-term changes rather than being restrictive for a short period of time. That's another element of the dieting that's attached to the concept of dieting, is limiting what you put in your body. And obviously our approach is about limiting. It is restrictive. We say don't do processed foods, don't do too much added sugar, things like that. So there is restrictive aspect of it. But even if you wanted to have those things in your diet, we still have a way that you can incorporate those things and maintain a balance, which is, I'm not sure if you've heard about the 80-20 rule.
Yes.
Where it's like 80% of your calories come from whole foods and 20 can come from, your desserts and processed foods, things like that. So we still leave room for all of that. But really, it's all about sustainability and kind of the way you frame it in your mind to change your perspective of it, and therefore your approach to it.
Yeah, and do you think to have like a lifestyle mindset, do you have a person should have a strong purpose to keep the habit and to stick to it, or it's something else?
Most definitely. I think there has to be an underlying reason. Now, some people, have the short term, because a lot of times most people say, "I want to lose weight," right?
Yes.
But that's not even the underlying goal, right? Because losing weight it translates to so many other things. Because like obesity contributes to an increase in risk in all-cause mortality. Like literally anything that you can die from, obesity increases the risk of it. So right then and there, the goal is not just to lose fat. That's still a part of the process. The underlying goal there is to become a healthier person.
That's right.
And so whether or not you're an athlete searching for a goal or I want to win a gold medal in the Olympics, or I want to just be healthier, no matter what your goal is you have to have an underlying purpose towards it, or else you won't be motivated to do it. So I think even when you don't have like an athletic goal to achieve or something like that, losing fat is stopping short of the real reason. And I think, you nailed it with the purpose. And I think purpose is the right word for it and not just a goal. So you nailed that one.
Yeah, I think purpose is more deep and the goal can change during the process, right? I see that way.
And there's several goals that could be under a certain purpose, right? So you can have like 5 goals all pointing towards a purpose. So
that's
absolutely
great. And can you walk me through what a day of healthy eating looks like for you?
Okay, well, I start my day off usually more times than not with a steak and nuts. So I start with, like 4 ounces or 6 ounces of a lean steak, like a sirloin steak, and a handful of nuts, whether or not that's, I try to mix them up, so cashews, almonds, things like that. And then, excuse me, and then I'll have a protein shake after my workout. Sometimes, depending on the type of workout, I'll drink amino acids during my workout. But I always have a protein shake after. And then directly, so maybe an hour after the protein shake, I will have a meal with like white rice and chicken, or like say white rice and fish and greens about an hour after that. And then the next meal will be maybe a big salad or a light meal with veggies and protein and no heavy carb. And then I'll have some fruit sprinkled throughout the day. So whether that's, and I try to change it up. I don't eat the same fruit every day. So like most of the time it's like berries, like dark colored berries are a staple in all of my meal plans. And then for dinner, again, another, piece of fish and some sauteed greens, and maybe some light pasta, something like that. And then always a snack later on, like some popcorn and a collagen protein shake with peanut butter, something like that.
Sounds great.
But and then sometimes it'll be some what do we call it? Some dessert, like dark chocolate or something like that. But I'm trying to wean myself off chocolate because I'm a little addicted to it.
Yeah, me too. It's my problem with the dark chocolate, but I love it.
It's healthy. It's healthy, so I eat a lot more of it than I would normal chocolate. Like if it was a normal, like say a chocolate brownie that I'm having dessert with family or whatever, I would limit that because I'm like, I can't have too much of this, too much sugar. But with like an 85% dark chocolate, there's so many benefits to that. So like I'll eat a whole bar in one sitting and not feel bad about it. But either way, it always puts me over my fat macros for the day. So that's one thing I'm trying to wean off, but that's also another staple that's in my day of eating.
And so do you break the rules sometimes, or you love your lifestyle and you stick to it? So it's 80-20, or it's more 95-5?
Well, for some people, it's for Amanda, I would say she's more 90-10. I'm more like 85-15.
Okay.
But that's the good thing about having that, is that the quote unquote breaking the rules is built into the rules, right?
Yes.
So that's what I like about it, is that, like, I'll have, a processed protein bar or something like that when I'm on the road, but I know that the vast majority of my stuff that I eat is whole foods and things like that. So yeah, of course, there are some times where I will break the rules. Say, like, most of the time it's when I'm at home with my family and my friends who don't live this type of lifestyle. I'm very disciplined in California. When I'm around my wife, I'm around my the group of friends that are out here, but the people that I grew up with and my family are much more lenient.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll sometimes slip on that. Like, for instance, I'll drink more while I'm home, or I'll eat more processed foods when I'm at my parents' house because that's what they have. But that's only for like a week or two, and then I go and make it up on the back end and kind of like go on a little detox for a week afterwards, or intermittent fast for a week, and kind of like do a reset.
Mm-hmm.
But for most time when I'm in my routine, I'm not traveling, the cheats are written into the rules. So that's what I like about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most important thing is to be aware and conscious about what is good and what is bad, and then when people know the rules, then they can break it, but they're aware of when they're breaking it. So I think that is the main difference.
Right, and self-awareness has a lot to do with that.
Yes.
And being honest with yourself about where you're at currently.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, if I know that I put on a little bit too much fat during my bulking session, so I go through phases where I'm like bulking and cutting, and so like if I know that I put on a little bit too much fat, I tell myself, like, hey, for this next month or so, you need to limit the amount of fruit you're having. Mm-hmm. Like, and this is not like, in most of the time with the 80-20, fruit is allowed, but too much fructose can be detrimental towards my goal at this certain time. So it's always about making adjustments and being like, hey, your body fat percentage is a little bit too high. Now, this is just for me. I'm not telling this for anybody else. I'm just talking about personally. Mm-hmm. Like me, my body fat percentage is too high. I can't afford to eat this. I can't afford to eat that, given what my goals are, mm-hmm. right? And so you have to assess what your goals are, be honest with yourself about your current condition, and then make a decision and tell yourself, I can't afford this right now if I want to hit my goal. And so it's self-awareness, it's honesty, and willingness to, accept the fact that you're probably not where you want to be right now. And that's where my mindset is, and that's where I'm also coming from, dealing with a lot of clients where every one of my clients is not where they want to be. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm talking about. There are many people who are happy with where they're at, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm not telling them that they're messing up or whatever. I'm just, I'm speaking for myself and from the position of most of my clients.
Mm-hmm. I got you. And why is meal prep so useful?
Time. Time is a huge factor.
Mm-hmm.
I meal prep the most when I worked 12-hour days, because I used to work in film, and there are very long shooting hours and days when you're working on a film set, and so meal prepping is, and not only that, but they constantly have this table of snacks. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of offices have this too. Like you go to a big office building where people work, and they'll have an entire kitchen full of snacks for their workers that day. And it's very easy to go and grab a quick snack that may, give you a little sugar rush, but it's definitely not going to be good for you in the long run. So that's when meal prepping comes into play, is when you know that you have, say, only a half hour for your lunch break and only limited options in and around your place of work. that's the number one value is saving the time and not being forced into the decisions. Forced into the options that are around you in your short period of time. So say, for instance, you work at an office and the closest thing is a McDonald's and there's a Subway across the street and that's it, right? And so that's the main thing, is like just giving yourself that option to do that. And then second, I would say is to just to focus on the meal that is troubling you through the day. So say, for instance, like I was saying before, say your lunch is always the problem because you're not in a situation you don't have time to eat healthily. Then I would just say, just prep your lunches and make everything else from scratch, right? And that way you're not eating, not taking all this time to prep every one of your meals when it's really your lunches that are your problem. And so yeah, time is the main thing, and also when you're trying to fit a certain goal, not falling off while you're time pressed, things like that.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think it's true. For example, breakfast is easier to prepare in the morning, but lunch is it's a critical time. So I agree.
Yeah, and also another thing is when you are on a meal plan and you are at the very beginning of it and you don't know whether or not you can stay on it, one thing that I always tell people is that planning out at least 2 meals a day and putting it in your fridge, well, if you're constantly tempted to go order takeout because it's easier for you than cooking, well, you've already made those meals. You don't want to waste them, because if you order takeout, then you're going to eventually have to throw one of them away. So that's what I think, it kind of like holds you accountable. Like, I've already done the work and prepped this. I've paid for this food already. So I don't want to waste the time and the money I spent getting it there. So that's another thing. It kind of just holds you accountable to your current meal plan.
That's interesting, yeah. And what are some of your top tips when it comes to meal prep?
So yeah, like I said before, I would say just start by doing the meal that's the problem area for you. So that's the first. And second, I would say start with doing bulk preps. So a lot of times you see on Instagram, like things for me where I'll have, 4 different containers and they have different compartments. And so it's like one has, your chicken and your veggies and your potatoes, right? Well, you don't need to do that to make it look nice and pretty. You can just make, a whole bunch of ground beef, put that in one container, a whole bunch of baked roasted cauliflower, put that in another, and then a whole bunch of, say, potatoes or rice, and put that in another. And then as you go, you can just pick 1 cup from here, 1/2 a cup from here, and then build your plate as is. And so you're not locked into this specific meal. You can kind of choose as you go. And so that's what I like, is kind of doing bulk preps, cooking a lot at one time, and not locking yourself into certain combinations. And then let's see, what's another one? Another one is having the right tools, like, for instance, an egg cooker. I know it sounds really weird, but like hard-boiled eggs, they're not as easy as most. I mean, they're easy to cook, but in terms of having them easy to peel and you're not wasting half of it for getting stuck on the shell, like that's where an egg cooker comes into play.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
And then so like I think that having the right tools in your kitchen and for the meal prep is another key tip as well.
Great, I like that. And can you give us one or more reason to go organic?
Well, there are a lot of plants that are still very heavily sprayed with herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. Like, for instance, GMO crops that are planted, they're not modified to be more nutritionally dense and to make us better humans and all these other things. They're made to withstand more chemical spraying. That's why they're modified, right? And so they're made to survive a vast amount of chemicals. So and there are certain plants that are sprayed a lot more heavily than others, like low altitude coffee. So like in higher altitudes, you don't have an insect problem, so they don't have to spray it as much, but coffee grown at the low altitude are still one of the most heavily sprayed crops on the planet. Like, you know, you can look up things like from the Environmental Working Group. Every year they publish a thing called the Dirty Dozen, and those are the 12 most heavily sprayed crops on the planet. Like, say, for instance, the most recent study found like there are like 36 different pesticides and fungicides sprayed on non-organic strawberries.
Wow, yeah.
And so it's things like that where there are some crops where you can buy normally because they don't require a lot of pesticides, but some that are, like I said, the Dirty Dozen, that do require them, strictly because they're a lot easier to lose vast amounts of crops to insects and things like that. So and we don't have I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary My Big Little Farm, I think it's what it's called.
No.
Let's see. Yeah, called let me see. The Biggest Little Farm. Okay, it's on Netflix, and this is an amazing documentary about the real way. Like, it's basically creating a farm the way that farms used to be, you know, 1,000 years ago, things like that, where it's not monocropping to where we're just planting one crop for acres and acres of land like we do in the United States. I know they do it in Europe too.
Yes.
But with this new style, it's almost like everything has a purpose within the community. So you have certain animals that eat the bugs, other animals that eat those animals to control them as the pests. I don't even want to ruin the story, but watch The Biggest Little Farm. It's great. It just shows how we don't need to be locked into this monocropping approach towards farming, and we can actually create a more what's the word I'm looking for? Versatile environment to where pesticides and herbicides are not even needed. And this documentary shows, and now there's a lot of heartache and a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? It's extremely difficult to create this situation, but these people did it in California, which is essentially a desert. So it can be done, and it just shows that we have a long way to go to change our methods because, you know, like obviously capitalism and the profit motive within the agriculture industry is a huge obstacle to this. But I still think, I know this is a long answer, but I think the herbicides, fungicides, and pesticides are still one of the main reasons to go organic. And we do have the option to do otherwise, but in the meantime, it's better to err on the side of caution and get organic if you can.
Thank you for the advice for the film. I didn't heard of it, so I will check it out. And I think it's all the how do you call it, the regenerative farm.
Yes.
Movement, right? Also, Dr. Mark Hyman is talking a lot about this important way of growing, like also vegetables, but also with grass-fed beef and Yeah.
You know, it's great. This just as another little selling point to this documentary. It's great because it not only covers the crops and how to deal with them and the pests and how to deal with them, but it also covers creating this ground foliage, right? Just an undergrowth that, you know, say you have this long orchard of peach trees, right? Yeah. But then under it, they have this undergrowth of just, you know, low grasses and shrubberies. Well, what this does is it actually traps groundwater and stores it, as opposed to, you know, you get a heavy rain, all of that water gets run off and swept away by the rain, and it gets dumped into the ocean. So you're losing a lot of the topsoil, a lot of the nutrients. Well, this style of farming, you know, traps the water, lets it sit into the ground, and it's just way better for long-term sustainability. It's kind of funny, like when my wife wanted me to watch this documentary, I was like, I don't want to watch this thing. But by the end of it, I was like, this is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life.
Fantastic.
So I can't recommend it enough.
Good. So the name is The Biggest Little Farm, right?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
And how important is MCT oil for you, and what are the benefits of using it?
Well, for me, it's not such a huge part of my diet, but it's something I incorporate into it. And this one's a little tricky because you hear a lot of claims about its benefits. Yes. I've talked about its benefits, like sort of like fat loss reduction. Fat loss, heart disease reduction of risk, and then, but the whole idea of what's another one? Blood sugar control is another benefit. But a lot of these things have to be done strategically. You can't just start, chugging some MCT oil and then seeing the benefits, because it is very calorie dense, right? Every tablespoon has 14 grams of fat and, like 140 calories or something like that. So it is calorie dense, but the difference is that these medium chain triglycerides are a lot more easily digested than the long chain triglycerides like in corn oil or other seed oils, right? Mm-hmm. So it's good in that aspect. And then, but a lot of times you'll see it in these studies as a fat reduction tool or blood sugar management tool. It's being compared to another oil, right? Okay. And so you have to take that into consideration, that it's not just adding this stuff to your diet, to an already poor diet. It's about swapping these things out, reducing the unhealthy fats, from seed oils like canola oil, and incorporating the MCT oil. So it's more like an either or swapping out thing than it is an addition thing to your diet, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So, but aside from that, if you want to do it in terms of, like, I like to do it when I'm on a higher fat, lower carb day, right? And so I'm not going to use that for energy, as opposed to fueling my workouts with, say, just straight sugar. Mm-hmm. Because some people will have like some oatmeal or some carbs before their workout to give them a sustainable energy source. But then other people who, like, say, for instance, I like to tell people to not spike their insulin before their workout if they want to lose fat. Mm-hmm. And because your body is going to draw from the workout, I'm drawing from the sugars in your workout and not from your fat stores. Because your body is going to take the easiest form of energy available. Mm-hmm. And if sugar is available, it's going to burn that. So in certain situations when sugar is absent, then that's when I would say, it's time to take the MCT oil before the workout. So if you're going to incorporate it, you definitely want to do it strategically, and like basically in replacing other inflammatory oils, and you want to do it when you're not taking a bunch of sugar at that time too. Absolutely. So, but additionally, it's great while you're on a ketogenic diet, because you can't have too much protein in that diet. You got to have, 70 to 85% of your calories coming from fat. So that's when I would highly recommend it, or whether it's you want to do that for fat loss because you're obese or because of epilepsy, it's extremely effective for that. It actually does have some evidence that it may help reduce lactate buildup in athletes and trainees, mm-hmm. which helps them to better use fat for energy as well. But for the most part, it's if you want to do it, I would say look into how these studies are done, and you mimic that as opposed to just drinking it blindly, so to speak.
I love it. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a very long, drawn out conversation, but I like, that's what I was talking about. Like, this one is another one of those that, like, is almost too nuanced to cover on an Instagram post. Yeah. Because there's so many ins and outs or whatever. But yeah, it's a great question. It's a great tool for fat loss.
And thank you for your explanation. Yeah. And many people are currently focused on immune health. Can you give us some tips to support and boost our immune system?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I would say get good sleep. Mm-hmm. Your immune function is heavily impaired if you have poor sleep, and especially if you have chronically poor sleep. And then another thing is to manage cortisol. So you don't want to be too stressed, whether that's physical stress, mental stress. Cortisol can affect your immune system, but that's kind of like an ancillary thing, and that's very hard to gauge in terms of how much stress that I have. A lot of people would tell you, anybody, if you ask anybody, they'll tell you they're stressed. And so it's not about the stress, because stress can be a very helpful thing and a very useful tool for our motivation, but too much of it can be detrimental to our immune system. But more direct approaches, I would say, is get outside and get some sun. A lot of people, when they go outside, before they even hit the sun, they put on sunscreen. I know you get a lot of information telling you to avoid the sun, but I would say wait about 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on how fair your skin is. For instance, like my family is from Southern Italy. I can take a lot more sun directly before I put on sunscreen than somebody, say, from Ireland. So it's more of like that. It's like you have to take into consideration what your genetics are. And because the more melanin you have, the more sunlight you need to convert enough vitamin D to get your adequate amounts. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how nuanced you want me to get into this, but yeah, the darker your skin is, the harder it is for you to convert sunlight to vitamin D. So the darker you are, the more sunlight you need. And so I would say, so that's the first thing: get outside, get some sun, and on top of that, regular exercise, but not overtraining, which goes into the cortisol stress thing we were talking about before. Because if you overtrain, say if you're constantly working out, you're training for a marathon, you're all these other things that are extremely stressful for the body, that can put like an overbearing burden on your immune system as well. Maintaining a healthy weight. So I know this is controversial, but they are the facts. So like, for instance, COVID, you at a much higher risk of COVID if you were obese or largely overweight, even if you were younger. So like most of the people that were young and had issues of being hospitalized with COVID or passing away, they were obese or close to being obese. And so it just, like I said before, it is something that increases your risk for all-cause mortality, no matter what the cause of death is. So a healthy weight is a huge one for the immune system as well. A variety of whole foods, so you get a variety of micronutrients. So, and that means supplementing if needed. That's a huge one, because, like, for instance, a lot of people, especially if you train, a lot of people don't have enough zinc, right? So if you're training or you're working out a lot, you don't have enough zinc, you don't have enough magnesium. So I think something like, I'm not exactly sure, but I think 85% of the U.S. population is deficient in at least one nutrient. And, our immune system uses these nutrients to all types of functions. And so I would say nutritional deficiencies is a huge problem that you would need to address. And so maybe doing like some nutrition panels or some tests every now and then to make sure that you have the right levels of vitamin D, things like that would be a crucial thing. Don't drink alcohol too frequently. That suppresses your immune system. Gut health, and then finally, gut health. Like the vast majority of our immune system resides in our digestive system. Yeah. So maintaining gut health, so with fermented foods, probiotics, prebiotic fiber, and just not overbearing the system with inflammatory foods constantly. Because if your digestive system's inflamed and constantly working to process foods, it's not going to be working to optimize towards fighting diseases and creating these antibodies and things like that you need. So, say you did have a huge weekend where you're binging on everything and you're drinking or whatever, that might be a situation where you might want to do an intermittent fast, to where you're giving your digestive system a nice 16 hours of break to really just do some anti-inflammatory processes and get back to a healthy state before you start getting back to your normal diet.
Yeah, brilliant. So thank you for all this advice. And what has your workout program been like since this all began? And what keep you motivated in this period of COVID and to doing like workouts?
Yes. So I'm lucky enough to have acquired a large amount of workout equipment in the meantime before COVID started. So I had I had a couple decent sets of dumbbells, and I had enough to at least keep myself going at the very start when it was one of those things where we didn't know what it was. What was the first thing they said? 15 days to stop the spread, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there initially was going to be a 15-day lockdown. So I was like, okay, well, I can maintain for 2 weeks. That's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But once it became a couple months, I just said, well, it's time to start building our home gym.
Mm-hmm.
So it did take a little adjustment, because there is a motivation factor of when you're actually leaving your house, going to a gym. You're like, I'm here. I might as well do my whole routine. And maybe even do some other stuff, because let's face it, like being around other motivating people is motivating in and of itself. These people are driven. You're surrounded by them. You see them working hard. You want to work hard too. So there's an extra added element of being around those people that is extremely motivating and keeps you there. But while you're at home and you're working on it in your garage, or say in your backyard, and you have all these other things, you have your phone, you have emails, so many other things are distracting you, and it's very easy to say, I'm done at home. So say, for instance, if you would normally do a 30-minute workout, say you got a good, you normally do an hour workout, but then at home you get a good 30-minute workout, and you got a good sweat going, and you're like, oh, this is acceptable. I'm good. I'm going to go inside right now. Mm-hmm. So that was a huge obstacle, because I noticed that I was not following through on the extra additional stuff. It's like, oh, I'll do this later, and then not do it later, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm at home. I'll skip my abs right now and do them later when I'm sitting in front of the TV. Yeah. And that didn't work out, right? And so I only did that a few times. Like for the first few months, it was like, okay, this is not going to work. And so so it took an adjustment period, but I was still able to stay motivated. But I do know a lot of people, like my old training partner, for instance. This is a guy who I trained with 5 times a week, and he never skipped a workout. And I just talked to him yesterday, and he said he hasn't lifted a weight in 5 months because he took a break, and now it's intimidating. Mm-hmm. So I see how even some of the most disciplined trainees or trainers have been affected by this. But me personally, because my business is this, so it's not just about, what I want to do personally with my personal goals. Is that, the idea that I have people that turn to me and look to me for answers. Yeah. Those are the people that I think really kept me motivated to stay on my own disciplined path. And so that's why, and that question reminds me, I should probably send a thank you post to all my followers for keeping me disciplined, But yeah, that's really it. Is the fact that I had to make small adjustments, but really what I do and who I'm working with are really the reasons why I was able to stay on track.
Uh-huh. So yeah, because you are an example for a lot of people. So yeah, I think it's a great motivation to keep working and doing amazing stuff. And do you still do like beach workout? Because I remember some of your posts that you were on the beach in LA.
Yeah, that was so great. Yeah, when we lived in LA, we would do a Saturday morning workout every morning for free. We would just invite anybody who wanted to come, which is kind of funny because I had 150,000 followers, and I would send this advertisement out, and I would say 60% of my following is in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And we would still only get like 20 people out there, which is kind of funny because you would think that you get a huge, a large amount of people showing up. Mm-hmm. But so we weren't able to do that during COVID. and then we moved an hour away, and so now it just, I think somebody else in that group now has picked it up and continued it, but it's not what it used to be. And that's honestly, to me, I was just thinking about that the other day. It's one of the saddest things, because that was one of the things I looked forward to every week, was going down there and getting a workout in the sun and being at the beach. And it just was such a great routine that COVID ruined, and I don't think we'll ever get back. I mean, we'll probably start it back up down here, but we need to build the community down here, because the way that had started was basically I had a group of people that we all worked at the same office, and like, hey, I'm going to go down to the beach this weekend. Do you guys want to go with me? And we'll all get a workout. And then, so we were working out down there, and then we ended up meeting a couple other guys who had played college basketball. And so we had some college athletes came up like, hey, can we work out with you guys? And then from there, we were just like, hey, let's just meet down here next week. And so it kind of grew into something from nothing. And so that's what I loved about it, is that it was just this very grassroots movement. And then it became this community of these close friends of like the same people coming in and week in and week out for 3 years. Wow. And it was so beautiful. And for some reason, well, not for some reason, for very important reasons, for COVID, it all went away. So we got to build it back up. But as of right now, we have not started it.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to have a real tribe, in the real world, and it keeps you motivated, and you feel part of a community. So it was nice to.
Well, and that's what I love about Los Angeles, is that you no matter what you're doing, you can find a nice large group of people that are like-minded. So if you want to party and you want to die young, you can find the crew that wants to party and die young with you. And so, but if you want to live a healthy lifestyle and you want to be obsessed with that, then you can find a bunch of people that want to do that as well. And so that's what I like, is that as long as you're able to put yourself out there, you can find a like-minded community in the city. So that's what's great about it. And I have no doubts that we'll be able to start it up and pick it back up again.
Yeah, I love it. And what are some of the biggest mistake and myth that you see in training or lift weights?
This could be a long discussion. So I'll try to sum it up.
Okay.
The first one is training without a plan. Okay. Some people walk into a gym not knowing what they want to do, and that could end up shooting themselves in the foot for a longer term sustainable program. So say, because a lot of people say you want to go in and destroy a certain body part that day. You're just like, I want to go in, I want to just destroy my legs. Well, now you're going to be sore for the next 5 days, and you're not going to feel like working out. You're not going to want to work out your legs again until they're healed and stuff like that. So many different examples about training without a plan. Another thing is, like, say if you have a specific goal, like you want to gain muscle, but you go in without a plan, well, you could stay at the gym for 2 hours, which is counterproductive to building muscle, because the longer you work out, the more cortisol you're going to build up, and which means the more muscle you're actually going to be breaking down instead of building up. So certain things like that. And not sticking to one goal is another thing. So say somebody they say they want to build muscle and burn fat. Well, that's going to be a difficult thing when you're like, you can do that much easier while you're at the beginning, like say 3 months of your training. Say you've never trained before, and you build muscle, and you're building muscle very quickly, and that muscle is helping you burn fat because you're increasing your metabolism. That's going to fall off the longer you train. And then at that point, you have to pick either or. Like, okay, now this phase for the next 3 to 6 months, I'm going to be trying to build muscle. And then for the 2 months after that, I'm going to burn off some of the fat that built with that muscle. You got to pick one goal or the other, And so it's kind of like the phrase for that, or the quote for that is, you only have one butt, you can't sit on 2 horses. Okay. Things like that. And so that's one of those things where it's like you have to pick a goal, have a strategy for that, and then move on to the next goal after that. Another one is that's kind of tied to that is program hopping. So not sticking to one program and finishing out in its entirety. Because a lot of people, they want to try everything because there are so many training programs to do. I mean, you can go and find 1 million training programs and you'll never have time to do all of them. And so and whether or not, like say you follow 5 people, right? And they're all shredded, they're all built, they all look amazing, but they all do different workouts. Yeah. And so you're like, oh, I want to do his workout this day, or I want to do his workout that day. Well, again, that goes back to not having a plan, and you might be doing, I wouldn't say you're being counterproductive, but you might not be optimizing towards your current goal. And then another one I would say is, this one is more, for guys, it's lifting too heavy. For women, it's not lifting heavy enough. So for guys, a lot of guys will want to ego lift, and they want to lift more because they're surrounded by people that they think are judging them, but really nobody cares. Like nobody at the gym cares what you're lifting, just the fact that you're lifting there. But so many people think that they care and will lift more than they can with proper form and end up hurting themselves or not getting the right benefit. And that's mostly what guys do. But for women, a lot of women, because of the misled fear of getting too bulky, won't lift heavy enough. So they'll lift these very light weights that aren't very challenging, and they'll do them for, say a minute, and then they'll put them down and rest or whatever. But when they could really be lifting twice as much and getting the real benefit from the lift, things like that. That's a huge one. And then last one is, not focusing on rest and on the rest aspect of your training program. Because most people, when they get that itch, they get that motivation to start training, they want to constantly go. Like I know I was like this before, where I was like, no rest days. We don't take rest days. Rest days are for the weak. But really, that's a stupid approach, because your body needs time to recover. You're never going to build anything if you're constantly breaking down. So, which is what training does. It breaks down your muscle fibers, and then you have to wait for them to build back up. So I'd say, without going too heavy into it, those are the main ones right there.
Thank you for all those great tips. And can you tell us also your daily routine?
Outside of nutrition? Outside of my meal plan?
Yes.
Okay. So I wake up, first thing I do in the morning is I will drink about 20 ounces of coffee, 20 ounces of water before I have my coffee. Yeah. So I'll have like at least 20 ounces of water plus, and I'll usually mix like a green drink in there, like those greens powders. So that's usually how I start that off, and I'll like squeeze some lemon and put a little bit of salt in there. And then I have my coffee. I make my espresso, which is a quadruple espresso. So I'm a little addicted to caffeine. And then I sit in the sun. So I'll go outside while I'm drinking my espresso, and I'll read, I'll juggle the soccer ball, maybe do a little light work on the computer or on my phone or plan out what I'm going to do today or things like that, right? So Amanda will plan that out at the beginning of the week. I'm a little bit more day to day. So like I'll plan out what I'm going to do today, and then I'll have my breakfast, and then I'll about an hour and a half after that I will work out, and then I'll work, and then I always fit in walks, around like 3 walks in my day. So I'll do a walk directly after my workout, I'll do a walk after lunch, and I'll do a walk after dinner. So lunch and walk would go next, and then do a little bit of work. And then sometimes I do 2 workouts in a day. So I'll do a light workout, like a 20-minute workout. So like, for instance, I'll do my weights in the morning, and then a boxing workout in the afternoon. And then we'll have dinner after that, and then sometimes my nephews live across the country from where I grew up. So I grew up like 2,000 miles away from away from Los Angeles. So I'm not able to like see my family. So I jump on my PlayStation and play online video games with my nephews sometimes and my brother-in-law. And just to kind of keep that relationship up and talk to them and things like that. And then I will watch a movie or a show with my wife, and then we'll both read, and then we'll go to bed. So like reading is always a precursor to our bedtime routine, because, you know, trying to unplug from all the screens like the computers or phone, things like that. So I try to turn those off about a half hour, 45 minutes before I go to bed, and try to read something light, you know, some fiction, something that is not going to get my brain
going,
spinning too fastly, you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great. You have a really awesome routine. And what are your favorite biohacks, and what new habit has most improved your life?
Oh wow! When I did the scan through, I didn't see this question. Let's see. It's okay. Biohacks. It's kind of weird because there's certain things with biohacks that like some people call biohacks and other people don't.
Okay.
So the definition is a little bit different. But for me, I will say I wouldn't say I'm a huge biohacker, but I do them. I mean, I do the sauna a lot. We have an infrared sauna here at home.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's basically just a little tent. It's not an expensive thing. You sit on one of those stability yoga balls inside the tent, and your head's popping up out of the top of it, and there's little armholes to where you can keep your arms outside and work at your computer or do things outside or whatever. But it gets up to about 150 degrees, and it's crazy. You stay in there for about 50 minutes, and it does feel like a real sauna. So we like to do that because there's a whole bunch of benefits for sauna. I like to do red light therapy. Amanda bought me a red light for Christmas, so there's all these different benefits for it. So a lot of people say there's skin benefits, testosterone, things like that. So I do that for about 10 minutes a day.
It's also good for recovery, right? You do a lot of workout, and so I think red therapy is very good also to recovery for muscles.
Yes. Yes, I've heard that as well. I mean, I primarily do it for the testosterone, but that is on the list of things of benefits for light therapy. And then, have you ever heard of grounding?
Yes, I'm doing grounding every morning with my coffee outside in the garden. So.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, so I like to, that's actually part of my daily routine. Every day I go outside and work a little bit in the garden barefoot. So like whether it's just pulling weeds or moving rocks from one place to another, because we live in a desert out here, and we also rent the house that we're in right now because the housing market's really crazy right now. So we're renting, and we're also in a drought. So I can't, we're allotted about like one water a day, like watering of lawn and plants and things like that. But other than like certain herbs and stuff like that, like I don't maintain a garden because we're in a drought. Yeah. So my gardening pretty much just consists of pulling weeds and things like that. But that is one thing that I do, is try to get out there and get in the garden, or I'll just I'll do yard work barefoot. So like whether that's mowing the grass or even just sitting out in the grass and reading. So sometime during the day I get out and do some grounding, get some time in nature. And then some people will call intermittent fasting a biohack because of the improvements on blood sugar and things like that. But so it's whether or not you want to call that a biohack. And I also do supplements for biohacking. So I'll do like not just supplements for micronutrients, but certain things like ashwagandha for like cortisol maintenance, which improves your testosterone to cortisol ratio. Certain things like curcumin for estrogen detox and anti-inflammatories. So some people would call that a biohack, but whether you want to call it, regardless, I do that. And then another thing that I have incorporated, I don't do it all the time, but functional music. Have you ever heard of this before? So
like binaural, like binaural beats.
Go ahead.
Like binaural beats.
Exactly. Yeah, binaural. Yes. So like alpha wave music for while I'm working, and like delta wave for when I'm sleeping, things like that. Now, I haven't done the delta wave for sleep since Amanda bought, it's a brown noise machine. So it just emits brown noise and drowns everything out, which I really like. But I used to do the delta wave for sleep, and I still do alpha wave music, which you can find alpha wave playlists on YouTube. You can find them on Spotify, things like that. But I try to do that a lot when I'm working, and whether or not it's a placebo effect or whether it really works, but I find like I get into the zone during the alpha wave music. So yeah, those are the main ones that I do.
Great, thank you. And you have created Master Your Health with your wife Amanda Meixner. Can you explain us what is your approach and your main pillars? Just for people who don't know you,
Yeah, absolutely. So the main pillars, I would say, would go more back into to what we had discussed earlier with the nutrition principles that we promote. The whole idea of reducing processed foods and added sugars. Getting nutrient-dense foods, eating the rainbow, prioritizing protein. Prioritizing sleep. And then also the things that have to do with the immune system that we talked about before, like get outside, get vitamin D, exercise regularly, maintain a healthy weight, don't drink or smoke and things like that, right? But then, but there's a main underlying message, and that's what I also discussed too before, is that taking control of that which you have control of in an environment where a lot of things are out of our control. So it's about controlling what we can while we can, and it's one of those things where, like we were talking about before, empowering people, and whether it's to meet a specific goal or to optimize your health or to make the smallest improvements in your lifestyle, it's all about, our main underlying point is making this very small changes and starting there and not changing too much at once. So like that's one thing, is that we cast a wide net by saying all these different things. If you read our ebook, our Master Your Health ebook, or if you went on our Instagram pages, we would be telling you 50 different things, right? But our main goal, our main approach is that if you can just pick one of them to change, then you're already on the right track and you've already won this game, because you've changed one thing and it has improved your life for the better. So
awesome, I love it. And do you have any quotes that you live your life by?
That's a good one. Hold on. So there's so many on so many different, like depending on so many different things, like whether you want to talk about things that are political, things that are health related, things that are motivating. So I would say one that always pops into my mind in this industry is by Hunter S. Thompson, and that's anything worth doing is worth doing right. So that's the first one. And because that's why I say it's like, don't waste your effort. It's you might as well optimize and not half-ass something, especially because you're doing it for a reason. You might as well go all out. And if you fail, that you gave it your all, and and you still failed. And so you have no excuse for failures. You can't look back and say, oh, well, I'm the reason why I failed there, right? It's like sometimes you just don't have the ability. Like say, for instance, I was never going to be a professional football player, right? Like American football, not soccer. So like because just in terms of my genetics, I was never going to do that. But I was gonna give it 100% while I played it, and then looking back and be like, well, I didn't get get to professional football, but not from my lack of effort, but just because it wasn't in the cards for me genetically, and that's fine for me. So I like that quote a lot. And another one is by Seneca, and it's associate with people who are likely to improve you.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot because I spent a lot of time around, let's just say, a degenerate crew of people, right? Around a group of people that wanted nothing else but to party and not care about, health, or not care about anything productive. I have enough of those people in the early part of my life that I don't need to add any more of those to my life. I need to surround myself with people that, for lack of a better term, are better than me and motivate me to want to improve and be better and to be like them. So, whether it's the partner you choose or the friends you choose, it's a motivating thing to keep in your mind and to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that are better.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I love this too. Yeah. And I would like to close this interview by asking you if there is one or more books that has inspired you and that you want to recommend to our listeners.
Oh, yes. Okay. So in terms of for nutrition, let's see, there's so many. For nutrition, I would say the 2 books to read to give you a nice, good understanding of the wide, let's just see, the big picture of everything, right? So one is Wired to Eat by Rob Wolf. And he just basically explains how we still are the same humans that we were 100,000 years ago when we evolved as hunter-gatherers, right? So we're still wired to eat everything in sight when we have it because we don't know when our next meal is going to come. So and we're wired to move less to preserve that energy, right? And so the funny thing is, it's like in this mentality, we're wired to move less and eat more, which is exactly what our current, like what technology and civilization has afforded to us. So the thing is that's what's contributing to all these health problems, is that we're wired to do the exact opposite of what we should be doing.
I agree.
Which is to have discipline, to move more and to eat less and things like that, and to be able to control what we're eating because we have an endless amount of variety in front of us and we can eat as much as we want to. So that's a great book too. And he talks about in a very easy way, he talks about all the hormonal signals that are going on in your body, and hormones dictate everything. So that's a huge factor. So I really like that book. Another good book for nutrition is Eat Smarter by Shawn Stevenson. And then, but another one I like just to cover overall motivation is I like Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. I like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. In terms of overcoming struggle as a motivational book, the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. Over in Europe and Italy. I'm not sure if you know who he is, because he was an escaped slave who became very educated after that. And so he's just a great story, very motivating, extremely smart and intelligent, revolutionary individual. And then the last one, I would say, and this guy is a little bit controversial because of his position in politics, but I think his book is extremely beneficial for overcoming mental obstacles that you have in your own brain, and that's 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And so, have you ever heard of that one?
No.
I'm pretty sure because because he was controversial because of some political things, and so that's that might make some of your listeners a little bit mad, but nonetheless, psychologically, it is a great book for kind of getting out of your own way, essentially.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to read this one. I know that the Seneca, I love Seneca work, and so all the books that you recommend sounds interesting. So I recommend it too. And so also you are doing also great ebooks for people who want to look for your work. Like you have a podcast, a great podcast as well. And
yes.
Yeah. Well,
we did stop doing the podcast because we were focusing only while we were focusing on the book, but we're going to pick it back up on Master Your Health. But yes, we're constantly trying to adjust and find the right mix or whatever. But we're going to be picking that up again very soon. And I just didn't want people to go looking for new episodes when we haven't done them for a couple months.
I see. So for people that want to check you out on social media, where they can find you, I will put on the show notes. But anyway, if you want to tell people where they can find you.
Okay, well, I am on @Chris.Rocchio on Instagram. That's ROCCHIO. And I know I probably say it a little bit different than your native Italian speakers. Wouldn't you pronounce my last name like Rocchio?
Rocchio.
Is that how you?
Rocchio.
Yes.
Rocchio, yeah.
And so, but yes, so it's Chris.Rocchio, and then our website, if you want to look at the coaching plans that we have to offer, or if you want to look up our ebooks, then that's masteryourhealth.net.
Great.
So that's our website.
And so next time we will talk, you will do the episode in Italian, right?
In Italian, yes, because I'm currently learning right now, and I'm going to Italy next month. So I will be in Rome and Ischia for about 2 weeks. And so because my family is from Ischia, one side of my family, and so we are going to be visiting there, and I will get some practice. And so yes, next time we will do it in Italian. Great.
So thank you very much, Chris. It was a real pleasure to have you here today. I love really your energy, and I admire your drive. So keep going, and you are doing such an inspiring work. So thank you again for being here and sharing all those information.
Well, thank you. That's very motivating. It's encouragement like that keeps me going, and was really excited to be a part of this podcast, and very honored to be invited on. So thank you so much for this.
So thank you, Chris.
All right. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.